Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Sedano, and I am the host of Paranormal Insight, in case you missed it. In case it wasn't obvious. With me today, I have Cat Ward and JJ Rose 777. Today, we're going to talk about animals and their psychic or even potentially psychic abilities, some stuff dealing with animals in the afterlife, and a few other fun things. So, let's jump right into it. I'm going to start us off with Oscar, and I'm going to share my screen so everyone sees Oscar. Hope you can see that. There he is. That's Oscar. Oscar,
Adorable.
isn't he cute? He's a cute kitty. And that's him next to the article that the doctor who worked with Oscar wrote about him. And here's why Oscar is so unique. Oscar was adopted. He's an adopted cat, and he was adopted by the Steerhouse Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Providence, Rhode Island. And he came to more, that was in 2005, I might add. He came to more public attention in 2007 when he was featured in an article in the picture, which was written by Dr. David Dosa, I see if I can get this word right, geriatrician. Oh man, I messed that up. And basically, he deals with folks in the sundown type of situations, terminally ill patients, that type of thing. And Oscar had an interesting thing where he would kind of predict when people would die. He'd lay down next to them, just choose them. It seems at random. It's like, yep, this one's going to go. I'm going to hang out with him for a little bit. And a few hours later, that patient would pass. There was an instance where Oscar chose to lay next to a patient while another patient who was certain to die, I mean, he was definitely sundowning. This patient that Oscar chose beat the one everyone was paying attention to death. That came out wrong. He didn't beat him to death. But the patient Oscar chose passed well before anyone expected him to. So everyone was paying attention to one guy. Oscar chose that guy, and Oscar was right. He was right 100% of the time. And he was there until 2022. Lived a good long life. And it didn't really dawn on anyone at the hospital what was going on until like the 20th person, when Dr. Dosa and a few of his colleagues said, you notice Oscar always chooses what's going on. So a number of articles were written about Oscar, including the one by Dr. Dosa, and interviews and stuff of the hospital staff over the years since Oscar's abilities became were noticed. So Oscar had this macabre ability to find and then lay down with, and apparently provide comfort to these patients in their final hours. Now, here's the funny thing about Oscar himself. This cute little kitty cat, this cute kitty cat did not like to hang out with people in general. Like, you could pet him, you could feed him, but other than that, he kept to himself unless someone was on the way out, and then he'd cuddle up next to them.
Sounds like Oscar
Wild.
was Death's
Sorry?
friend. Sounds like Oscar was Death's friend.
Death's friend. Did he see it coming or not? And I guess that's where the question really revolves around Oscar.
Helping them cross.
Possibly. Now, here's the interesting thing. Dr. Dosa, being a doctor, being a man of science, he comes to this conclusion. The cat was responding to the smells and chemical odors emitted in the process of dying. So he's smelling the necrosis, which makes sense.
Yep.
But it also kind of this cute little kitty I have up on the screen. he he still chose to lay down. I mean, that's a macabre thing. You know what? I like the smell of dying people. I, I think I'll go hang out with him for a little bit. That's a macabre cat, man.
Just a little.
That's a little bit. So JJ could have a point though. We explore all things here in the paranormal world, both the scientific and the metaphysical and the metascientific. So that could be it. It could be that Oscar says, "I'll give you a hand, buddy," and help with the crossover to one degree or another. Let's talk about thoughts on this. Was it science? Was it metaphysics? What was it? Spirituality?
JJ, you
Well,
can go first.
thanks. So it's pretty well known that animals have different, olfactory senses than we do, right? Their sense of smell and hearing, and sometimes their vision even is more heightened than
Sure.
humans.
Mhm.
But there is it used to be like an old wives' tale that when people were dying or just about to die, there would be a smell of almost like almonds, right?
Hmm.
That goes back in a lot of old literature. The room smelled like almonds. I knew he was going to pass. And so there's something to be said. Now, that being said, there's also, many animals that were known for being able to pick out people who had cancer,
Yeah.
who had other diseases, or cancer was usually the most known one because it's not obvious when you look at someone, right, that they have something going on inside,
Yeah.
especially because this dog could detect it so early. But there's also a ton of service dogs out there who help children who have epilepsy
Yeah.
or
I was
even
going to
adults
mention
with
that too. Yeah.
epilepsy.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
For heart
because
attacks too.
hard, exactly. So, if you look at it from the scientific aspect of that, we are, human beings, but we're basically a whole bunch of electric things going on, synapses and electric modalities happening within the body, and they short circuit for a seizure or a heart attack or something else that someone sensitive enough would be able to detect that. Now, I know since I was a child, I have a really, like, the joke is I have a nose like a shark, right? You could smell like one drop of blood and a million gallons of water. And I do. And when I was younger, I remember I was maybe like 5, 6. I was playing with this girl and I was like, "Oh, you have a cold." And she was like, "No, I don't. I feel fine." I'm like, "No, you have a cold.
Yeah.
Like you've got a virus." And the next day she got sick.
Yeah.
And then, she called me a witch. And I was like,
That happened
"Well,
to me too, by the way. I don't know if I ever told you. You just reminded me of it. That happened to me too.
I
And to this day, it still happens. I smell lilac or jasmine off people.
oh,
Hmm.
that's interesting because
And
mine, it's a very distinct, non-pleasant scent.
well, it's sickly sweet. It's not as pleasant as jasmine. It's off. It's like, it's weird, but it reminds me of jasmine.
Okay, like a sickly sweet
It's sickly
almost.
sweet, yeah.
Okay.
And then, the next day, like you said, they're sick. It's like, I purposely keep away from them, like gatherings or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm staying a hell away from you.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, it was awesome, during the last couple years with that big
Oh,
thing that
yeah.
happened in the world.
Yeah.
Because I could actually determine which one was which was odd because, when I
Wow.
actually got that thing and it takes away your sense of smell,
Mm.
which I only lost for 2 days. God, that was a weird feeling, by the way. Um,
Yeah, when it
it
hit me, the same thing happened. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to eat, obviously, right? Because there's no taste, there's no smell. But at the same time, I realized how much I depend on that sense. Um, and I mean, I could even smell people's hormones. Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And so when I got older and I started smoking cigarettes, it actually dampened it down for me because I was able to not be so overwhelmed. I mean, I would be around people and I'd be like, "Oh, you're going to get sick. You got this going on. You got this going on. It's too much."
Ah,
So
Wow.
I can understand why animals could almost like there's certain people they go for and certain people they stay away from,
Yeah.
depending. But I find it so wonderful that, our fur babies and our feathered friends are able to assist us. I mean, there are some really wonderful cases with dogs who were able to smell cancer and
Yep.
people were able to get it, taken care of before it got out of stage 1,
Oh,
which is
that's awesome.
incredible.
That is awesome. Yeah, I was going to mention something along those lines too. I didn't have a specific story, but yeah, epilepsy dogs, narcolepsy dogs. That's a fun one. So they'll get under the kid before they hurt. You just
Oh,
feel,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
Really?
yeah.
Maybe oncology clinics should start hiring these dogs.
It's a good idea. But at this
Seriously.
point, unfortunately, it's still a meta science. But never mind, it's
Yeah.
been proven. We have dogs who just do this anyway,
Yep.
and other animals. So I don't know. I think science needs to open up its blinders a little bit. I can appreciate the scientific method. Absolutely. I started out
Yep.
in science myself. But I don't know.
I I still think that science is catching up though, because if you look at people with emotional support
Yeah,
animals,
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
um, I know one person who has it's a tinier dog, and this dog knows when the person is about to have an anxiety attack. I
Uh,
mean, they're not even triggered. They're just living their life. And all of a sudden, the dog's on them and just curls up and does this thing. And then the panic attack hits the person. And they, like the dog sensed it before they even did. So, in a
gotcha.
way, that is psychic because the trigger hadn't even happened yet for the
Right.
person. Um,
Yeah.
and I even know myself, with my babies, when something is going on with me, and I know a lot of people are going to think reptiles aren't warm and fuzzy, and right, but
That's not
mine
true.
are.
No, no, no.
And
I know firsthand that's not true. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So I remember this one day I was on the couch and I was really upset over something, and I think I was crying. And I
Oh,
looked up, and both of my turtles had come to the side of the tank where I was and just sat down and were just staring at me very
Oh.
lovingly and just hung out with me.
oh,
And they didn't normally do that because I sat in that place a lot. It's kind of where I sit to watch TV. My bird, I've noticed myself, and my bird doesn't really go to a lot of people. Like, I'm mom, right? So she kind of stays with me most of the time. But one of my friends was over and I was out of the room and she had started crying, talking about something that was going on. And
mm.
my bird literally just jumped on her and just curled right up to her neck,
Oh,
Hmm.
which like does not do that. So obviously I come in the room thinking, okay, when I come in, she'll jump back to me. No, she just stayed with her until she was over what she was going through. So that shows to me that, animals instinctively know and that they want to help and want to protect.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
I have
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Absolutely. Go ahead.
I have a friend who had a really bad accident. He fell off a cliff.
Oh,
I
God.
can't remember how many feet. Yeah. Um,
Like in the
anyway,
hundreds? Was it or tens or
maybe 50. I
oof.
don't know. Yeah.
Oh, 5 stories.
Um,
Man, that's rough.
yeah, and they had a hard time because it was in kind of like a forested area, and it was like the he was visiting. He showed some friends where the I can't remember the name of the place now. There's waterfalls there, and it was a little slip, and he lost his footing and went down. Um, One of his friends went with him, but one friend went one way, which was not very far, and he went the other way, and just yeah. So he had a lot of issues since then. Cardiac arrest was one of them, and he finally was able to get a support dog um, that would sense when he was going to have a heart attack. And
Like
he
the
was
dog
just
was trained to that
the
or just
dog was
knew?
trained to that. Yeah, it
Okay.
was trained. Yeah. So he was able to get that dog with him to let him know. I think the dog also could sense other issues that he was having, but it was mainly for heart attacks, for
Wow.
cardiac arrest. So it was amazing. But um, sad story though. He had put the dog in a kennel to go someplace, and something happened, and the dog passed away at the kennel. They didn't even tell him, I think, until he got back, and he's just like, "What did you do?"
Wow.
Like, yeah. And you grow attached to animals anyways,
Yeah.
but When
Extremely.
someone is when a pet is there to save your life, there's that extra bond as well
Yeah,
because that animal can sense things that other people cannot sense necessarily.
right.
So he had quite the bond with that dog, and he was very, very upset.
I
Rightfully
bet.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just amazing how animals can just sense all these things coming from humans.
Yeah, I think there is an extra ability. And as JJ mentioned, animal senses are extremely heightened compared to ours.
Oh yes, yeah.
Anyway, so maybe that just ties into the natural physiology. Is there a spiritual component? Possibly. The Egyptians certainly thought so,
Yep,
for starters, with cats.
yep.
Hmm.
Um, but it lit, there was speaking of cat, let's transition to our afterlife experiences with animals.
Well, wait, I want to tell you
Or if
this
there's,
really weird.
go ahead. I'm
I want to
sorry,
tell
I
you,
did cut you off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
that's okay. I just want to share this interesting experience that I had because it's kind of on track with what Kat and all of us were just discussing.
Okay.
So I was in Hawaii on vacation with a whole bunch of friends. And on the way to Hawaii, I had torn my ACL.
Oh.
Um, and it's the worst tear that you can have. Basically, it snapped, right?
Been there, been there, been there. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
do not recommend. 0 out of 5 stars. Uh, it was so loud. Actually, when it popped, it was so loud it sounded like a shotgun went off, and I was in the
Oh.
plane, so the
Been
entire
there,
plane
been there.
turned around.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was awful. So, obviously I go up in the air and then I land in Hawaii and, my leg is black. I'm schlepping around like 150 pounds of luggage and this bridesmaid's dress that was like 40 pounds on itself. So
oh,
it was a lot, right? And where we were, everything was you've got to walk. So a couple days after the event, I decided to go on this little boat trip. And I really should have Googled what a manta ray is before I decided to go
they're huge.
because
Yeah, go ahead.
I was so unprepared. So it was go on this boat and then we're gonna go snorkeling for manta rays. And in my mind, I'm thinking, cool, like they're obviously not gonna get near us, but also like if I don't want to get off the boat, I don't have to.
Right.
So we, beautiful boat ride and it's gorgeous. And, my legs finally like feeling a little bit better. And I'm very zen. And the boat stops and like, okay, everyone off, you're going to go snorkel. And it's getting dark at this point. So I'm a little confused as well. Now, they have just told us that manta rays, they don't know where they come from or how they give birth because they
That's
put
not true.
trackers on them and then the manta rays go so deep that the trackers actually burst. And basically all they know is that these little baby burritos spurt up and those are baby manta rays.
Yeah.
And at this point I'm like, okay, cool, like I'm gonna go see some aliens in the ocean. Like that's totally up my alley, right?
Yeah.
So the boat stops and everyone kind of goes in the water and I realize, oh God, I have to jump into the water and then grab a hold of this lit up paddle board with all these people and then put my face in the water. And I'm thinking that's a little bit much. And I'm just working up the nerve and the boat like lurches and the
Oh,
guy pushes me instead of, grabbing a railing, he pushes me and I go smack into the water and my knee snaps again.
Oh.
oh,
Yeah.
oh.
So this
Oh.
shock wave goes through my entire body at this point, right? Like the physical pain and then the stress of just I've just got pushed in the live ocean, right? In the middle of it too. Like we're not even by shore. In the dark. Super great. All these things I've seen in a movie before. Again, 0 out of 5 stars. So I paddle for my life over to this little lit up thing and I'm having a panic attack at this point because not
Oh,
only am I thinking I don't know how I'm going to get back onto the boat, but like the shock and the pain and the I don't even know where I am or where any of my friends went. And so I put the thing on because the people are like, "Oh, look down right now." And I look down in the water and I'm just trying to keep my breath even, right? Because, like I said, total panic attack, like I'm breathing real hard and crazy.
Right.
And all of a sudden, from the depths of the ocean, comes this thing with its mouth wide open.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is how I die. Like, this is how I go out. Like, this is an odd ending to my life, but like, so be it. And then it comes and it literally just rubs its belly on me. And when I tell you this thing was big, okay, because
They're
some
huge.
people are gonna think I'm telling a tale. The leader of this little expedition goes, "Oh my God, it's Big Bertha." And I'm like, okay, that's kind of rude, right? Like to call me Big Bertha. And then he was like, "You guys, look, Big Bertha really likes her." And she comes back and does another pat. And I mean, we're belly to belly. And she does this thing where she's with my belly and she's flapping her wings. And I'm thinking, this thing's trying to mate with me, right? Like, this is where my head is at. And the minute she makes total contact and flaps the wings, my entire body just relaxes. And
Fun.
all the anxiety goes away. And then she swims away. And then all these other manta rays keep coming up to me and doing I don't know
Wow.
what they call it, the Slimer thing, right? Where they graze you. And then the instructor is freaking out. And I don't know why, because I'm thinking this is what we came to do. And he's like, they really like you. And I'm like, okay. And like, no, you don't
Like
understand.
me, how?
They hadn't seen Big Bertha in like 4 or 5 years.
Oh,
Wow.
Her wingspan is 16 feet.
that's a big manta
Whoa.
ray. Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I tell you that when she came out from the depths and like glued onto my belly, and I was like, I'm gonna die. Yeah. So
That's
that
amazing.
to me is a true story of like they felt my anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, super cool story. Don't get me wrong. That
I've
was
heard
a
of her too.
really that makes sense. She's giant.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really interesting experience. How the minute she touched my skin, I completely relaxed.
That's
And
amazing.
you know, here I was in so much stress. I mean, when I say I was freaking out, like imagine you're in the dark, you're in open water, you don't know where anyone is, and your knees busted, and you just got shocked by being thrown into the water.
How was
So
your knee
yeah.
after?
What?
How was your knee after?
Oh, I totally needed surgery, but I was able to get back on the boat and was able to get home.
That's good.
Wow.
So, I mean, she didn't heal my knee, but she healed the anxiety of
Mm-hmm.
Right.
all of that.
Let me ask you, if you recall, was there any sort of electrical discharge from her? I mean, even the slight tingling.
Honestly, I was in such utter terror at that point of, you know, dear God, all of these things happening at the same time. And then just seeing this giant mouth from the depths of the ocean. Like I thought it was gonna eat me.
Yeah.
I did. Because when they don't close their mouths, right? So their mouths are constantly open. And
Oh, I
when I
didn't know
tell
that.
So
you,
they breathe. Yeah.
yeah, so she's got a 16-foot wingspan, and I saw her, it was like the abyss, right? You remember the
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I was like, and I'm going out in front of all my friends by a monster. It's great.
Nice.
So the lesson is A, yes, animals can sense our anxiety and fear, but also B,
Yep.
if you're gonna go look at something, Google what it is before you go.
So you're not surprised by a 16-foot Leviathan coming to say hi.
Yes.
The manta rays are actually pretty cool. They're really docile and gentle creatures.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They're actually pretty, yeah, they're pretty nice. They're generally friendly. There was a video, I'd say upwards of 10 years ago, a group of friends was in Hawaii and they're swimming with dolphins.
Mhm.
In that there's this special grotto where they can swim with the dolphins in the shallows. And this manta ray comes up, they're all doing a selfie, right? And this manta ray comes up and joins them,
Wow.
kind of mounts up on one head and and they all freak out. It's hilarious. But they're super, they like people, and
To
I've
eat
even
or they
heard
like
of
to hang
them.
around?
I've even heard them protecting people from other predators in the water, kind of like dolphins do.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know they were like that.
Yeah, they're pretty
Huh.
cool.
They are really, really cool creatures. And after, I had calmed down and all the babies were coming up, I was just so
Oh,
grateful.
That's awesome.
Um, and the babies are much smaller, right?
the
So I
little
was like,
Right.
yeah,
burritos.
this is doable. You can't swallow me. But even I had like even schools of fish that were coming up and were in my face and were kind of down around my knees. So I was like, I guess they do sense something.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's not very often you get me in open water. So that's my
We'll have to try
story.
Me
that
too.
experiment again, Ray.
No.
Without the knee pain, the knee injury.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure I'll do that.
Let us then move on with our pet theme or animal theme, I guess we'll call it. We've had some afterlife experiences with pets. Does someone else want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'll go.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So the team that I was with, because I'm kind of semi-retired from investigating now, we were doing this. We're investigating a private residence, and when we walked into the place, she had crosses everywheres.
Ooh.
She had a mirror in one of the rooms that that can, like, it's like a mirror that you can just swivel, like
Oh,
top to
sure.
bottom type thing. Yeah.
Okay.
She had a blanket over that because she said she didn't like it, which even before she mentioned it, I didn't like the feel of the mirror. So I don't know what was going on with that.
Okay.
But we could hear meowing. Our ears could actually hear meowing. Now, usually, the lead investigator, she's the psychic. We all have various abilities, but not like this lady. She's amazing.
Is she
Um,
JJ level?
oh yeah, yeah, easy.
Okay.
Like this woman, like, holy cow. Anyway, so normally when she'll say, "Do you hear that?" and we're all like, "No," and my saying was always, "I hear shit. I see shit. No, I
You
don't."
tell him.
Yeah, but I used to always feel bad because everybody else says, "Yeah, I hear it," but I'm like, "Well, I don't see or hear anything," and she says, "No, that's good." I'm like, "How's that good?" And she's like, "Well, you're not just saying it for the sake of saying that I hear it. Like you're honest, like not saying the rest of the team members aren't, but it's just."
Right. I get you.
So yeah. So anyways, we could also hear the cat meows on our recording as well later on when we went back.
Oh,
So
wow. On
yeah,
the
which was,
EVP?
yes,
Oh
yes.
my
So not only
gosh.
could we hear, this lady had no pets. So yeah,
Wow.
so we're like, why? And I'm like, why do I keep hearing meows? And everybody else like, yeah, I hear it too. And the woman's like, well, I don't know. So we asked, do you have any pets? She says, no. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird. And it wasn't like it was an apartment or a duplex or anything. It was just her house. So
Uh-huh.
we thought, okay, that's kind of strange, but move on. So I'm not really big on orbs. To me, there's because I don't fully understand them. So to me, it could be dust, it could be hair, it could be bugs, it could be a lot of things. But I was manning the video camera, looking up the staircase. So we had one of our members sitting in the stairwell, just asking questions, and I have the video camera up. So to my right, looking through the railing, I had one of the team members taking pictures. So all of a sudden on the video camera, I see this orb go zoop up the stairs and disappear. And I'm just like, okay, that's kind of strange. At the
Mm.
same time, this lady, one of the team members, was taking pictures, and we got great evidence of what looks like a cat. So once we were finished the investigation and we went back to reveal what we found, we showed her the pictures, and she starts freaking out. She goes, "That is my cat that passed away a few months prior."
No, I just want a point of clarification. You're saying she didn't have pets, but she did have pets
Oh,
prior.
yes, prior. Yeah. She currently did not have living pets.
Okay, so the cat passed a few months ago. It was in the house. Okay, gotcha. I just
Yes.
want to
Yeah.
clarify that.
Okay.
I was a little
Sorry. Yeah.
confused.
Yeah. No. And she kept saying that the one of the things that made her call us to go do an investigation, a lot of times when she was sleeping, she felt something at the foot of her bed.
Um,
And come after asking questions, and we come to realize that the cat was curling up with her when she was sleeping.
yeah,
Well, she calmed down after that, she wasn't as freaked out, but it's just amazing how our pets can still hang around months after they've passed. So
yeah,
it's kind of comforting in a way.
yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's pretty
actually,
cool. That
actually,
happened to me. That happened with all of my cats actually.
wow.
Um, this one cat I had when I first moved into the house I'm currently in, um, some what 15, 20 years ago. No, longer than that. I was in high school at the time.
Oh,
Anyway, when we first moved in here, and that cat lasted 19 years, and she visited me for like a month afterwards. It was great. On my bed and the whole thing, curled up in the exact same spot she always did. And
oh,
Mhm.
I actually one night I was, you know, awakened to a point, but not completely. And instinctively, I went out to pet her, and it was air. It's like, oh, there's no one
oh,
there. Because
Whoa.
no.
yeah, it was there was nothing there. It's like, where's my cat? I felt her. I know she's
Yeah.
here.
Oh.
And my cats after that, one of both passed within a year of each other in
Oh,
2020 and 2021. And they lived 17 years, I think.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good age.
And yeah, good age for them. And both of them came to visit me. It was really cool. It was really nice. I'd had dreams about them once in a while back then too.
Oh,
Not so
yeah.
much anymore, but yeah, both came to visit me. They curl up. They all had different spots in the bed too, so I could tell who it
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
So I've had that experience myself.
I've done readings where I've seen people who have had, animals that have passed that come around and say hi and stuff like that. But, obviously I haven't, well, I mean, I've had cats and dogs, but usually like they lived somewhere else before they passed. So they would just kind of pop in, let me know they were gone.
Oh,
But a couple years ago, we had a bird that we had had for about 15 years. He was like 30
oh wow.
and
Yeah.
total part of the family. Um, when I say this bird was not a bird, like he was more human than a bird. I mean that in all ways. And so when he passed, it was Christmas Eve, and he had stayed with me for a
Oh,
month before because he was getting sick and I was trying to nurse him. And it was rough. Like I took that loss probably harder than most human deaths
Mm,
because animals are so uncomplicated, right? Like humans, we're complicated. We have complex relationships. There's things we love about each other, things we hate. With animals, there's none of that. It's just
mhm.
pure unconditional love. And so, I mean, when I say I mourned, like I could barely speak for 3 days when he
Oh,
passed. It was rough. So he basically really bonded with my husband the last month that he was alive. And so my husband was like, well, now we've got to get another bird. And I was like, I can't handle that. Like,
right.
absolutely not.
Right.
And um, so about a month later, I had this dream where that bird came to me and he said, it's time. And so I woke up that morning and I told my husband, all right, let's go to the pet store. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, we're going. So we go in, and this little tiny runt of a bird, this little baby, right, who is the runt of the pack, um, jumps on my husband and curls up on his neck. And I was like, that's our bird. Your bird picks
Oh,
you. You don't pick the bird,
yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yep.
And so we get everything ready. And so we had a couple days in between when we took her home. And as we're getting everything ready in the house and the cage set up and everything, I start freaking out because I'm like, I haven't raised a bird from a baby in a very long time. And I've always had animals and they've always taught me how to take care of them. But I'm like, she's so young that like I'm
Mhm.
going to have to remember. And I go to sleep and I have this dream where I see the baby bird that I have now. and I see all my birds that had passed away, and they all fly down. I'm going to get emotional when I talk about this. They all fly down and they all teach her something, and they're teaching me as well. And I'm watching, like, one of them is showing, here's how you do your wings. The other one's like, here's how you eat, here's how you drink, and teaching me a couple things of care. And I woke up and I was sobbing, and I was like, let's go pick her
Oh.
up now. Like, I'm ready.
Mhm.
And she's been taught, and we brought her home, and I swear to God, this is my child. Like, there's no ifs and buts about it. Like,
Mhm.
she comes with me everywhere. And it was such an incredible thing that all of these birds from my past came and really taught her, because she was only 5 months old when we got her, and she
Oh,
Oh,
was
wow.
just out of being hand fed, which means like she could barely feed herself,
gotcha.
Mhm.
and everything went wonderful. So that's my little story. I'm gonna go sob now.
Aw.
Let's talk about spirit animals because I've been wanting to delve into this for a little bit.
Mhm.
And I know we don't have a lot of time, but let's dedicate a little bit of time to spirit animals. And I'm talking about ones that we have caught on camera. I'll give you a couple of examples. Have you seen the video? And I think it was up in Canada of the moose. There's these people cruising in a boat, right? And they're screaming up this river, and it's not a flat bottom boat. It's a regular boat, speedboat.
Mhm.
And they're screaming up this river, and there's this moose that's kind of tracking them, pacing them rather. And then the moose crosses in front of them, and he's just trotting along, right? Like he's walking on the water, right?
Yeah.
And it's on camera. It's not CGI. It's been investigated very thoroughly by professionals who have that equipment to really determine all that stuff. And I'm in the film business. I know about that stuff too, what to look for. And it was amazing. This moose just overtakes a speedboat and crosses in front of it to the other bank and just screams up this one path he wants to take. There was just a couple frames when the moose is actually in front of the boat. And you can see that the moose has two tails potentially. It's a little weird. It's a little offset. It's blurry. You can't quite make it out because this moose just jukes and cuts him off, basically. If you were driving, you get pulled over. But, so, and there's part of the spiritual animal myth is that spiritual animals have multiple tails in line with not only this moose, but say the kitsu or you know, kitsune, if you prefer it. It's a fox with multiple tails.
Mhm.
It's spiritual. One, did you see that video? And two, do any of us have any spiritual animal experience?
I
No
have
and
not
no.
seen that video.
You have
Yeah.
not seen the video?
No.
No.
Oh,
I'm gonna
I'll
have
have
to
to
look
share
that
that
up
to you.
now.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna need you to play that for me like ASAP.
Yeah.
I've never heard the
Yeah.
thing about spirit animals having two tails.
Multiple
Um,
tails, not always two, but like I said, the kitsune or the kitsu, depending on where you're from, they're foxes with multiple tails. It was showcased in that it was a Marvel movie about the Ten Rings.
Oh, yeah.
If you know what I'm
yes,
talking about. When
but
they go to the fantasy world, to the other realm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, but what's really interesting about that is actually an entity that looks like a fox with multiple tails, but actually it's a female woman entity.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, so
Well, the
with
moose, I'm sorry to briefly interrupt you. The moose with the two tails is actually native folklore. That's part of native folklore, and we actually caught one potentially on film.
oh,
I
So
really have to see that
yeah,
video.
yeah,
Wow, that's
it's
amazing.
really innocuous. There's a moose pacing a speedboat, and he walks on water right in front of him. It
oh.
was amazing.
Wow.
There's a lot of interesting legends and lore when it comes to animals with different
Yep.
variations. So obviously for me, I have my spirit animals. I can work through crows, but also, I have one that spiritually it's not a tangible physical crow. Um, but I can have it go up and kind of scout an area for me, and also my spirit wolf. And I've actually been in situations where one day I remember I was real strong with her and I walked into the store and three people at the register turned around and said, "Ma'am, you can't come in here with that." And then they all stopped and then looked very confused. And
Oh.
I giggled and I said, "Don't worry, she won't shed." But and I asked them, I said, "What did you see?" Because I went to one of those registers and they were like, "I saw this huge white, I guess a dog wolf."
Well
I was
done.
like, "Yeah, yeah, that's her."
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
It's amazing.
And there are times I can actually feel her like curl up around my legs.
That's
Yeah,
neat.
it is pretty cool.
That is pretty neat. But there was a an animal that did something really weird in front of me, and I'm wondering if perhaps it was spiritual, or if this is a function of this particular animal that I'm unaware of. So I had just gotten, this is a few years back, I say 2018, something like that. No, it was after that. It was just after our major pandemic thing. And so everyone was going out in the world and really enjoying themselves. Well, there's this nice remote area. It's a protected historical landmark area. It's a park, and you can go walk around, hike, and all that. And they have old barns there of when it was a functioning ranch. And so I'm going out there and I'm capturing clips, 4K clips of life, just natural settings, rustic settings. And I see this. I think it was a hummingbird. If it was the biggest hummingbird I've ever seen in my life. It was almost the size of a robin. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
robins aren't that much bigger, but they're big. Those are bigger birds, right? So, and it's a hummingbird because it's got the super long beak, and it came in and it did the whole hummingbird thing where it comes in and it landed, and you could hear its wings. It was that big of a bird.
Hmm.
You could hear the wings beating, and it lands kind of not off to one side of me, right? And I make it anywhere from 6 to 8 feet away from me, and it does this funny little dance, right? Like it's doing a mating dance. Now, the funny weird that's not the weird part. The weird part is, I swear, I hand to God and the whole thing. The bird flashed light from either side of its breast, like it puffed out its breast, and light emitted from this thing, and it was incandescent because he landed in the shade of a tree, and it was a big tree, lots of shade. And I'd say feather reflection normally, like pigeons do, or other birds who have that behavior that they'll puff out and things will reflect on the feathers. There was no light to reflect. So these two flashing little things happen, and I go to turn the camera on it to see, in a second I do, it flies off. and
What?
and I tried to look this up, and there are a few Native American legends about the hummingbird. None of them are with flashing lights, but or anything like that. But there was one where there was a light above one hummingbird legend's head, and it was a beacon. It was leading someone out of danger or something like that. If this, as the story goes. Again, that's a Native American legend.
Did you ever
But
find out if any legends had like the bigger hummingbirds? Like, because you said it was a lot bigger than a normal hummingbird.
yeah, the bird mentioned in the legends were larger.
Hmm.
I couldn't believe I saw anything like that. It's like, what the hell is that? I
Yeah.
was up all night on the on the ornithology websites, and it's like, what the hell is this? I was
Yeah.
asking experts. It's like, what did I just see? Why did it
Well,
flash
first of
light?
all, that's huge because I know what the size of a robin is compared to a hummingbird, and
Yeah.
they're drastically different.
Yeah.
And even if the hummingbird had spectacular vegetation to eat from, there's no way it would get that big.
Yeah,
I
'cause
mean,
they're so
that's
tiny.
Well, there were other hummingbirds in the area too, and they were normal sized. I took pictures of them and
yeah, so
photos
this
and
is like
video
the
of them.
king of all hummingbirds. First of all, I'm disappointed I didn't get a call after this experience.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Gotta
Very
surprise you
upset.
sometimes.
Yeah. So
Mental note, whenever
wait,
we have something like that, we have to call JJ.
I do
yes.
that now. I talk to her about weird dreams all the time.
Oh yeah. I sent him like a 10-minute voice clip the other day. I was like, I had this weird dream. Want to hear about it? He was like,
Come on
listen.
down. But
So
yeah, go ahead.
that's first of all, that's just brilliant and amazing, and that definitely does sounds more supernatural.
Yeah.
On the hummingbird thing, I remember my husband was at work. This is when he was doing construction before the world shut down.
Mm.
And he got a call that a good friend of his had passed away really suddenly. And
Oh,
it
wow.
was very unexpected, very just, I mean, completely out of the blue. And it literally was one of those moments where like he had to stop everything and just kind of sit down to process.
Mhm.
And he's sitting on the steps of this like gutted house. And there's really no vegetation around, right? Like the house had been gutted, the yard's pretty much gutted, they're digging everything up. And he's just sitting there, and all of a sudden, this hummingbird, normal size, Tim, normal size,
Okay.
comes over to him and sits on the banister right next to him.
Oh, wow.
And he's sitting there, he's processing. He said he was there for about an hour, and he said this hummingbird stayed with him the entire time. And when
Oh.
he got up, it stayed. So he started to get worried, like, is this bird okay?
Oh.
And he looked at it and he said, thank you for staying with me. And that the bird just like zipped up, looked at him right in his face, kind of did like a little boop, and then just flew off.
Did a boop, really?
poop on his nose?
Well, it didn't.
No.
It didn't actually touch him. It just kind
Okay.
of like almost like it nodded,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like
Gotcha. Oh,
like
gotcha.
it got
Okay.
close, like
That would have been
confirmed.
funny
And
though.
Yeah.
I know, that would have been great.
Yeah.
And I've had them a couple times, like I'll be standing on my porch and they come right up to my face. I'm like, we're like beak to beak, right?
Okay.
Wow.
And my mom at one point had that happen, and then she found out she was standing next to this flower and it wanted the flower. But
Oh.
with me, like I don't have anything where I stand on my porch. And someone was like, oh, they like the reflection in your eyes. I'm like, I don't think so. Like I'm a giant compared to them.
Yeah. No
But
hummingbird's
those
gonna really risk that. Yeah.
Birds are drawn
no.
to you, aren't they, JJ?
Yeah, definitely.
And
Big
fish.
animals.
Big fish.
And fish, yes.
Yeah. Giant
And that-
sea creatures.
And that fish has wings, so you could kind of say it's a seabird.
Seabird.
I do love seagulls. Don't even get me started about my
Have you
seagull
did you see
stories.
the
We'll be
picture
here
of the
all day.
albatross on the news the other day?
No.
I think it was in it was either off the coast of, it was somewhere in the Atlantic. I can't remember if it was on US side or England side. But this fisherman's out there and there's this albatross, big monstrous eagle-sized seagull basically, for those who don't know. And he's cruising, he's surfing the wind right in front of the boat, right?
Oh wow.
And the captain, and he's hovering above the boat as this is happening, above the deck rather. And so if I'm the captain, the bird is right here. And so
Whoa.
he takes a little and this thing was huge. It was amazing.
Oh,
But-
that first of all, that's just awesome. I know they found some rare seagull in our area that hasn't been seen in like 200 years or something
Oh, wow.
I read
recently.
that, yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
a big to do about it. And I was like, it still looks like an average seagull, but okay.
Yeah, it's like it's got more of a dip in its beak or something like that. Almost like
Yeah,
an
and like something on its head, like a gray patch on its head. I don't know.
right. And doesn't it crest too or something like that? I can't
Oh, I
remember.
didn't hear
I thought
that.
I thought it crested too. I could be wrong.
I actually thought it was hilarious though that I was like, oh, another seagull. How exciting. Because But I do. I love seagulls. I know that, they're sky rats, but I think they're beautiful. That's what my husband calls them, sky rats. Those
Yeah.
and
A
pigeons.
Oh,
friend of mine,
they'll go out there trash and everything. Yeah, go ahead.
a friend of mine's mother, they're from Newfoundland. It's so funny. They had the grandkids, and then she says, "Look at the shithawks," to the grandkids
Oh my God.
in a thick Newfoundland accent.
Oh, that's so cute.
It hawks, that's amazing. It's my new swear for people.
Get out of the way, shithawk.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't have that effect with birds where they come up to me. For me, it's squirrels and chipmunks. I could sit there and they'll actually come
Really?
up to me. They'll
Yep.
sit on my chest. Sometimes I'll give them food, sometimes not, But yeah, I can get wild chipmunks and squirrels to come up to
Just
me.
wild, huh? Not the ones
Yeah,
that get fed all the time?
yeah, yeah.
Right. Wow,
Okay,
that's
Kat, I
impressive.
need pictures first and foremost. ASAP, make that happen for me.
I'll try.
And so I have squirrels that will come up, but they're usually the ones, like you were saying, Tim, that are used to getting fed. Like, obviously, my front yard, so I feed everything.
Yeah, you
Um,
do.
yeah. And so, like, I'll have a squirrel, but they won't take anything out of my hand. I'm working on that.
Right.
But I do have an entire murder of crows now that comes to my
I
house in the
want
morning.
crows. I'm trying to
Oh,
attract the crows.
I love it. And the little birds actually will get really close. And I have these two little baby woodpeckers.
No
They're really
kidding.
tiny. Yeah. And they're so cute. They make the sweetest little beep, 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 beep sounds.
Yeah.
And these guys will stand right next to me and get seeds and they'll talk to me. Like, we'll have full blown conversations. I know. Okay. I know someday I'm going to go missing and the last footage of me is going to be me on video having a conversation and people are going to think, who's she talking to? And the reality is it's a bird.
The
Yeah.
birds took her. Be our new queen. Yeah, that's it.
I would
I
totally
have to
do it,
tell
by
you
the
a
way.
creepy story about a squirrel.
Okay, good.
So
Oh, tell.
my husband and I were first married and military, so we're living in the PMQs, the military
Okay.
housing. And I look out my front window and I see this squirrel eating a bird, I swear, he's looking right at me. Like,
No.
this is what, yeah. And I'm just like, oh my, it was so disturbing. So I actually had to get the phone number for Department of Natural Resources or whatever, or forestry or whatever it was. And I called them and I'm like, okay, I don't know if this squirrel is like a psycho or if it has rabies or what, but he's sitting in my front yard staring at me, chewing on a bird.
Mm.
Oh my
So he
God.
says, it's unusual but not unheard of. I guess squirrels are opportunists and they'll eat anything that they come across. So that bird was probably already dead and he thought, hey, I'm hungry. I'm going to have dinner. But I swear that squirrel was looking right at me going,
This is you if you don't get and watch it.
yeah, right. Get the peanuts, get the peanuts. It
Oh
was
my
the
God, that's
creepiest
terrifying.
thing. Yeah. And
That is weird.
I had never ever heard of squirrels eating meat before. So I was really disturbed.
I found out deers eat meat once in a while,
Yeah,
including squirrels. Yeah,
I
that was
recently heard
weird.
about that too. Yeah.
And they
Wow.
caught it on film
I know
somewhere.
there's an uptick in Canada, especially of the wasting disease,
The witch?
which which primarily affects deer. It's a it's it's some disease that happens and basically they kind of become zombies and they start
Oh, I know
acting
what you're
really
talking about.
erratic and
Yeah.
yeah, they start acting really erratic and
Yeah.
almost aggressive and they'll end up killing themselves usually. There was a really weird case of this poor guy who I think he was in the military and this deer basically follows him to this tree, like chases after him and he gets up in the tree and the deer is just bashing its head against the tree
Wow.
until it finally passed away. And it was awful. Like that story alone, I think is still marred my memory because every time I see a deer and then I hear of the wasting disease, all I could think of is that story. And I'm like, help me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Get out of the
My
tree
daughter.
now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My daughter,
To death. Wow.
my daughter and I were listening to this. I think it's like Darkness Prevails show or one of those shows like that, and they're talking about this deer. That's not a deer. They were saying the flesh is hanging. It has an odor. You know, it's going into a gruesome detail of how this deer looks,
Mm.
and it said it had blue eyes. So my daughter's driving, and I'm just playing on my cell phone. And then just out of the blue, I looked at her, I said, deers don't have blue eyes. And she says, that's what gets your attention, not the one with the skins hanging. So it's a running joke now. Whenever we see a deer, it's like, does it have blue eyes?
Oh my God.
Like out. One of
I
the
love how
animals.
oddly
Go ahead.
undisturbed Kat was by like most of that story.
Blue
I
eyes.
held back
Huh.
on my story.
Yeah.
I held back on mine because it's so gruesome. I think it has scarred me for life.
Did you hear about? Oh, the name of the creature is eluding me now. But
Marmot.
it's basically a deer, but it's not a deer. Almost I want to say Wendigo,
Okay.
Yeah.
but they're often depicted as having deer heads with the antlers
Yeah,
and
with like a
everything.
weird
Are
thin
they
human
bipedal?
body.
Yeah, they're like deer. They're bipedal.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I heard this one story. I think it was on Coast to Coast
Hmm.
a long time ago, and this hunter says, "Yeah, I saw that." They were talking about Wendigo and other creatures of the forest, spirits of the forest. And so, yeah, I saw me a Wendigo. I was out hunting. I forget where he was. I think he was in one of the lakes of Michigan. And he says, "I'm out there with a hunting party, but we're spread out because we're all hunting for different things. We're gonna, you know, they have a triangle pattern, but they're like yards and yards and yards apart from each other." Or meters if you prefer, cat. so so he says, and I hear the sloshing in the water, because they're around the little finger pond, right? A finger lake rather. And it's kind of dark and it's hazy, and they're about ready to pack it in anyway. So he's in his stand and here's the sloshing, and they're on radio. It says, "Hey, I got something on my end." Well, he's past me. Yeah, he's past me too. It's all yours. Okay. So he starts sighting. And the sloshes are slosh, bipedal sloshes. It
Hmm.
says, and he's thinking to himself, that's weird. Either it's stepping really in tune, because deer don't do that. They go all four legs, right?
Yeah.
And so they have it's obviously a quadristep, you know. This is a bipedal slosh and it's big and it's loud. These sloshes, slosh. And he finally gets sight on some antlers and he's super excited. This thing's a 20-point buck if it's three, right? And so I'm not much of a hunter, but I know a little bit about it and what gets hunters excited. Um, so he's super excited. Oh, this is gonna be awesome. And then he realizes this thing's standing. Now, deer do stand once in a
Yep.
while to get foliage higher up on trees that
Or
they
when they're
really,
fighting.
really want, or moss or whatever, and they'll
Yeah.
have climb up a tree. But it's not an unusual prospect. But he couldn't figure out what this deer was going after because there was no hanging branches. Slosh, slosh. It keeps crossing this lake. And he realizes that this deer is crossing on 2 feet. He sees it now, but it still doesn't make sense because deer will doggy paddle across water.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And the Finger Lake's deep enough that you might have to doggy paddle if you're even a sizable deer. But so he's stepping, but his steps are irregular. They're not the little tiny steps you would see like a dog or a deer or whatever quadrupedal animal normally would on its back legs,
Yeah.
like twinkle toes, you know. He's not doing that. He's stepping and stepping. And he realizes that he doesn't have front hooves. He has claws.
Oh.
And He kind of noisily flips off the safety on his rifle, and the deer stops and turns to him. Clearly not a deer now. Claws, bipedal walking, deer head, and it looks right at him, and then does this, and he's sniffing the air,
Oh,
and the ears twitch. He's looking for something. He's looking for the source. He doesn't quite have him zeroed in yet.
yeah.
So this hunter doesn't move. He opens both eyes so he can have a clear eye, and he very slow the
What's the good?
rifle, and he gets it down, and he doesn't move. He doesn't move, and this deer tracks under him, or deer creature, Wendigo, whatever you want to call it. It tracks under him, still on its hind legs with the claws, sniffing around. Goes like this, rears its head up, and he said this thing must have been easily 8 to 10 feet tall. Hoof to antler, right?
Yeah.
And looks up, still can't zero in on him, so he moves on. He watches it. He's just so quiet. And like 2 minutes later, he gets something on his radio. Did you get him? I didn't hear a shot. He
Yeah,
says,
nope.
and he doesn't respond because this thing's still in visual. He says, "You okay, Jim?" And he turns down his radio just in case. And he says, "I stayed up there until they came looking for me."
Wow.
And my friends came looking for me. And he gets down and he says, "I led that party out. I was running ahead of them." And I told them the story over beers, and they didn't believe me. But that's what happened. So,
Wow.
Hard no for me.
yeah. No
Hard
hunting.
pass.
No hunting.
My
No.
husband and I a couple of years ago went camping at Algonquin Park, and the park
Where?
it's in Ontario. It's a big national park, and we didn't go to the main gate. We went to one of the side roads, whatever, for the park. It's you can't get cell reception. It's just like it's remote, right? And we
Mm.
thought just gonna go camping for a couple days. Beautiful place. We had a bullfrog in because we were right against the water, so
Mm.
we could go swimming if we wanted to. There was a bullfrog living in the water, so it was neat, And I had chipmunks coming up to me like usual, and so we're driving. There's also logging that they're doing, but we drove by this one place, and it said the name because there's lots of lakes, and they're saying whatever lake is here, whatever lake is here. Then we see one Wendigo Lake is over here, and I'm just thinking, oh, we're in a remote area. We're at Algonquin Park. Why is it named that, first of all? So usually they name it after something that they've seen, and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I was a little concerned. I didn't have any bad feelings, but I was on heightened alert. I was very well aware,
I bet.
very well aware of my surroundings. It was still quite a ways away from our campsite, but still, we drove past it, and I'm just like, wait a minute. Yeah.
You
Like
gotta
when
wonder
you
about that,
hear, I mean, isn't that the start to like every horror movie? Like,
That's a
oh, and they
great one,
went to
yeah.
like Devil's Mountain or,
Yeah.
Werewolf of Platypus, Lake or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
Werewolf
that's
I think
Grove.
it's fine. Yeah. I think it's fine.
no.
It'll be fine. It's just legends.
Yeah.
Dear
Oh,
God.
that's my next horror movie right there. Well, this has been a ton of fun, very educational for me, and I hope for you at home. Kat, JJ Rose, thank you so much for being on the show.
Such a great
Thank
pleasure. Thank you so
you.
much. Anytime.
So we will say adieu, and we'll see you soon. This has been Paranormal Insight, and I've been your host, Tim Sedano. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Thank you for watching and listening. Please click the subscribe button and activate notifications for future episodes and other content. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram under @paranormal_insight.